Well, thank you, Gulam, Zade. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am really thrilled to bring to the Meritas membership, as well as to our clients, a great conversation about your perspective on how Meritas and our firms can best serve some of the mid-market businesses that we work with. So thank you for taking some time with me this morning.
I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to spend some time and catch up a little bit.
Excellent. And just by way of quick introduction, Gulam Zade is the CEO of Logicforce, and they are an IT consultancy that specializes in working with law firms across the country. So we're very thrilled to have you join us. So I was wondering, Gulam, if you could start by telling everybody a little bit about your role at Logicforce. And in particular, I know that you recently moved from being the general counsel at your company into the CEO role. And I think your sense of how that transition has gone for you, as well as your relationship with the firms that you've been working with, will be really valuable. So perhaps you could spend a couple minutes talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out in private practice and then did a lot of corporate insolvency work, and then came to Logicforce to be the in-house counsel. And about 2.5 years ago, made the transition to CEO. I have for a long time thought that the legal education actually set people up extremely well to be in the C-suite, mostly because I think that we are taught how to think critically and think differently, which is an extremely important asset to have when you have to make decisions quickly. And so it has been an interesting transition from the in-house counsel to the CEO role. One that was actually a lot easier to make than the private practice to in-house counsel role. I think that transition was actually a little bit harder. In the CEO role, I just have to make all the decisions that I normally made as an in-house counsel much quicker. And there's no longer that, when you're the in-house counsel, you can kind of rest assured that someone else is the final arbiter and the final decision maker. Now it's on me, which makes it a little bit tougher and a little bit, I think maybe a little bit harder than I used to, about whether all of the decisions that I'm making are how they'll affect everyone and if they're the right ones for the company.
Yeah, yeah. And did you end up hiring a general counsel to fill your role? How did that sort of work for you all?
I did not. I decided to, again, being in the CEO role, you have to make a number of different decisions. Some of them are financially related, and so the work that I used to do, it made sense for some of it for me to keep on, a very small portion of it, and the rest of it for us to outsource. And so that's what we did with our role. And I think that for a lot of companies that are in our size, in our segment, kind of in our market cap, it probably makes more sense to go outside for those services as opposed to having a dedicated person that does it for themselves.
Got it. And just for folks that don't know, maybe could you tell us a little bit about the size of the company and where you sort of are in the market?
Right, absolutely. We are just under 50 people, so we don't have to comply with all of the federal laws that come into place when you get to 50 people. We're toting that line, and we will get there very shortly. But at the moment, we're under that, and then we operate in 16 states around Tennessee in the Midwest and Southeast, and have clients all over the country. But from a people standpoint, that's where we are. From a size standpoint, that's where we are.
Okay. Great, that's helpful, yeah. And then I know you and I first met while you were chair of the Association of Corporate Counsel's Small Law Division. And I'm wondering if you could share with our audience today a little bit about, from that perspective, what are some of the things that you're seeing in-house counsel are thinking about for the coming year? And what are therefore some of the things that ACC is going to be thinking about for this group?
Absolutely. First and foremost, from ACC's perspective, one thing that has been extremely beneficial for the small law department side is our partnership with Meritas. When you look at that group, it is a lot of in-house counsel that are in a similar position that I was in, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 people, you can't get your hands around everything. And so with the ACC group, not only do we get the benefits that come with being part of that organization, but as an SLD member, Meritas has availed us with a lot of different things. The phone a lawyer, I think is a big thing that's been extremely helpful to our membership. And then, the vast majority of our programming for our small law department, which numbers thousands of in-house counsel, is done by Meritas attorneys, which has been extremely helpful. And I know because a lot of those relationships I have heard about and that have gone on further, whether it's been someone that I knew on the in-house side that said, hey, I saw this program, and then we ended up talking to that person, or even on the private practice side where we brought in law firms that I know that are Meritas members, where they've been able to gain some of those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
In 2020, a lot of the programming, a lot of what people were looking for was really pandemic related and pandemic crisis related. And so a lot of it was very quick. Hey, what do I do now? How do I send people home? Or, we had a number of programs that were done by Meritas firms around the PPP and other loans that were out there that were extremely helpful. And I think that will continue into 21. I think that when you're looking at it from an in-house perspective, it's, the PPP and other loans all have to go through this forgiveness process that I think is going to be very important, because the majority of those are going to be reviewed by the in-house counsel. And so I think a lot of those in-house counsel are going to be looking outside of what they know, especially if they don't have, even if they have a banking background or even if they have a regulatory background, there's going to be a lot of work associated with that. And so I think that the run out, or some would say the fallout of what happens with all of this money that our government gave away in 2020 is going to be a big topic of conversation in 21.
Sure.
And one of the things that we saw towards the end of 2020 that became a big topic for us in small law was people coming back to the offices and how you incorporate that and what you have to do. And I think that's just going to continue into 21, because I think that if you look out into the outside world, nobody really knows what's going to happen over the next few months. Our economy is going to come back. Are people going to be comfortable? And I think a lot of those labor related issues are going to be very high up there, and some of them are labor related, some of them are privacy related, as it relates to, health data and things like that. And then I think the other thing that's going to become important for small law departments is, what about our data, right? Because we had all these people that, we kind of controlled in our 4 corners of our offices and what they could do and where our data lived. And now you've got them scattered all over town, all over your state, all over the country. And so I think that that's going to be something that's going to be very, very top of mind for small law departments and for ACC in general, because again, those 3 things, what do you do with your loan money and how does that work? What do you do with your people and your labor, and how do you protect your data? I think those are going to be 3 very important topics for smaller law departments, larger law departments, and frankly, I think the country at large and business at large. Those are going to be 3 things that are going to be extremely important in 2021.
Yeah, I think that seems, and what you said about sort of the pressure point of needing answers quickly because the changes that we're choosing to make are coming fast, and I think that puts a lot of pressure on the business to have to make quick decisions and yet mitigate risk as they make those decisions. And I know that's something Logic Force has been looking at as well. I've seen some of the content that you've been talking to people about the IT structure they have to do that. I'm wondering if you could kind of continue on that idea that, so given that rapid iteration, what are some of the things that might be shifting regarding the way in-house counsel are working with their outside counsel? Are there different pressures or benefits to the current circumstance, things that the law firms are needing to do differently to meet those in-house counsel demands?
I think that in particular, I think the way that the two interact is going to change a little bit. I mean, I think it has over the past 9 months. There are a lot more interactions like this, as opposed to, a law firm bringing in-house counsel into their office and having them in the conference room. And that doesn't happen as often. So I think the interaction is going to change in the way that they interact. I think something that is going to be very much top of mind for in-house counsel, it has been for a number of years, but now with the transition of people going home, it's going to be even more top of mind. And that is the data security side of things, because again, you're talking about moving your data outside of your walls to a law firm, and then evaluating. It's one thing for the corporation to make sure that their data is safe. It then becomes another thing for the law firm to get it, and then another thing when all of those lawyers go home. So I think that's going to be an important piece in the way that the interaction changes. And then, I think that depending on what industry you're in, you're going to see swings in outside counsel usage. I think that some companies are going to take a hard look at it and make a decision. Hey, we're gonna rein back in some of the money that we spend. But I've seen just as many go the other way and make the decision that maybe we're not best at doing this, and maybe we should be looking at how do we outsource even more of this, or do we really need a full-time person that just does regulation work if we're only getting questions every so often. And so I think that it is going to be a good time for people to specialize on the outside counsel side and be able to bring answers to the forefront. And kind of going back to that quickness of answers, that it's important in a law firm, because a partner tells an associate that it needs to be done quickly. It's extremely important in a business, because that time can mean money. And so I think that the specialization is going to become even more important. And we've seen that over the past number of years in the legal environment, is that people have to start specializing in things. And I think that, again, when looking at trends, I think you're going to see data security is going to become even more important. The way that you interact with your in-house and outside counsel is going to change, but I don't necessarily think it's going to change for the worse. It's going to change for the worse if you're in commercial real estate, because I don't think people are going to need large conference rooms anymore. But I don't think that it's going to change for the worse for the relationships and the interaction inside and outside counsel have. And then the last piece of it, again, I think that in-house counsel will actually become even more acutely aware of utilizing their outside counsel, especially for very niche things, because again, they're not going to have the time and breadth of knowledge to figure out something very specific. And I think that over the next year, we've seen it over the past 12 months, whether it's loans or whether it's, remote work or, the type of other labor issues that we've seen over the past 9 months. I think those things are just going to become more and more prevalent, especially until we kind of figure out how to go back to whatever the new normal is going to be.
Yeah. And I think some of the benefits of having a stronger relationship with that outside counsel, which I think is a little bit what you've been talking about, is their ability then to reach across a range of clients and pull understanding of the trends and understanding of the regulations, so that they can more rapidly give information, as opposed to somebody, I would imagine, in your shoes, who is somewhat isolated in trying to make a decision for your company. And the value that an outside counsel can give you of, well, here's what we're seeing in 5 other companies that look like yours.
Absolutely, because I don't have that kind of insight, and that's one of those things that there's no real way for me to get quickly. I can read the law, I can figure out what a regulation says potentially, but it's difficult for me to figure out what 10 other companies that are similarly situated are doing. And so going to those places, going to those outside counsel is going to become extremely important. The other thing, and there are a number of Meritas members that I've seen do this that have done it extremely well, is doing those kind of updates on, hey, here's what we're seeing, here's what's out there. And I know that sometimes it's one of those things where, just like in any business, you got to evaluate whether or not you want to give away information for free. But what I've seen happen, especially recently, is, firms that are doing that are actually gaining market share because in-house counsel are seeing this, hey, this firm is putting this information out about PPP. When I have my problem, who am I going to call? And I shouldn't have used the word problem because my next example is us and we didn't have a problem, but I had a PPP related question, and there's a number of firms that we use for regulatory work or bank related work, and I'd never called on this firm before, but I called them, and it was a Meritas firm here in Tennessee because they had done a lot of kind of general industry knowledge and, hey, here's how PPP works, here's what we're seeing, here's how it'd be helpful for you. And I called them because I knew that they would be better than, or the perception, and they were, in fact, better because they were doing this and were in it every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's, first of all, thank you for that. It's great to know that that was successful. And I'm glad to know that you got the service and the answer you were looking for. Perhaps you could just, as we wrap up, say a little more. Do you have specific advice? And it sounds like one of them might be that law firms keep their members and their audiences, or their clients and their audiences, aware of some of these specializations that they're developing. What other advice might you give to Meritas or to our members from your perspective that they could do best for their clients in the year ahead?
I think that one big thing that I would say make sure doesn't get lost is those touch points with whether they're with current clients or prospective clients. I think with a lot of firms, as with a lot of businesses, marketing budgets are going down, and I wouldn't advocate for spending a lot of money, but I think it is important to make sure that your firm is out there, that people see that you're doing something. And then secondarily, check in on your in-house counsel friends, because I think that's one of those things that is very simple to make a phone call and say, hey, how are you doing? Are your kids back in school? That type of thing. And because partially, I think everyone's a little bit lonely these days because we're all very isolated. And I think that's a pretty easy thing that firms can do right now that doesn't cost all that much money, that's just out there to make sure that people remember you. But I do think the bigger one, especially right now, is make sure that you're doing things proactively that are getting your firm name out there and that are putting you at the forefront of specializing in whatever that specialization may be.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you so much, Gulam. This has been a great conversation, and I really appreciate all the insights that you were willing to share with us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, and I hope we talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.